Right, so in this poetry episode we're going to do another poem from Alice in Wonderland's Through the Looking Glass by Lewis Carroll. This one is read by Tweedledee and Tweedledum. It is in the version, the old animated version. It's called The Walrus and the Carpenter. So what I want you to do is listen to this poem, and remember, you might not know all the words, but I want you just to try and get a gist of what it's talking about. So The Walrus and the Carpenter. The sun was shining on the sea, shining with all its might. He did his very best to make the billows smooth and bright, and this was odd because it was the middle of the night. The moon was shining sulkily because she thought the sun had got no business to be there after the day was done. It's very rude of him, she said, to come and spoil the fun. The sea was wet as wet could be, the sands were dry as dry. He could not see a cloud because no cloud was in the sky. No birds were flying overhead, there were no birds to fly. The walrus and the carpenter were walking close at hand. They wept like anything to see such quantities of sand. If this were only cleared away, they said, it would be very grand. If 7 maids with 7 mops swept it for half a year, do you suppose, that the walrus said, that they could make it clear? I doubt it, said the carpenter, and shed a bitter tear. Oh, oysters, come and walk with us, the walrus did bespeech. A pleasant walk, a pleasant talk along the briny beach. We cannot do with more than 4 to give a hand to each. The eldest oyster looked at him, but never a word he said. The eldest oyster winked his eye and shook his heavy head, meaning to say he did not choose to leave the oyster bed. But 4 young oysters hurried up, all eager for the treat. Their coats were brushed, their faces washed, their shoes were clean and neat. And this was odd because, you know, they hadn't any feet. 4 other oysters followed them, and yet another 4. And thick and fast they came at last, and more and more and more, all hopping through the frothy waves and scrambling to the shore. The walrus and the carpenter walked on a mile or so. Then they rested on a rock conveniently low, and all the oysters stood and waited in a row. The time has come, the walrus said, to talk of many things, of shoes and ships and sealing wax, of cabbages and kings, and why the sea is boiling hot, and whether pigs have wings. But wait a bit, the oysters cried, before we have a chat, for some of us are out of breath, and all of us are fat. No hurry, said the carpenter, they thanked him much for that. A loaf of bread, the walrus said, is what we chiefly need. Pepper and vinegar besides are very good indeed. Now if you're ready, oysters dear, we can begin to feed. But not on us, the oysters cried, turning a little blue. After such kindness that would be a dismissal thing to do. The night is fine, the walrus said, do you admire the view? It was so kind of you to come, and you were very nice, the carpenter said, nothing but, cut us another slice. I wish you were not quite so deaf. I've asked you twice. It seems a shame, the walrus said, to play them such a trick, after we brought them out so far and made them trot so quick. The carpenter said nothing, but the butter spread too thick. I weep for you, the walrus said, I deeply sympathise. With sobs and tears he sorted out those of the largest size, holding his pocket handkerchief before his streaming eyes. Oh, oyster, said the carpenter, you've had a pleasant run. Shall we be trotting home again? But answer came there none, and this was scarcely odd, because they'd eaten every one. So, that is a little poem, as you can guess. It's about the walrus and the carpenter who managed to coax all these oysters to come out of the sea and leave their master oyster just because they want some food. So in the end, they end up eating all these oysters. So what I want you to do is think of the rhyme scheme that's used there. So, but not on us, the oysters cried, turning a little blue. After such kindness, that would be a dismissal thing to do. So can you see, it's got a rhythm and it's got a rhyme. So what I want you to do is, it doesn't have to be related to Alice in Wonderland, but have a go at writing just a short poem, only about 10 lines long, okay? But I want you to try and use rhyme. So if you can, try and write one line with a word that rhymes, then a line, then another line, and this one rhymes with the first line. So it's going to be a rhyming pattern of 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, so the first line rhymes with the third line, the second line rhymes with the fourth line. And remember, try and get a steady rhythm to it. So as I say, it can be about absolutely anything. And once you've done that, I'll see you for another bit of poetry in another episode.